if you ever do an off season, at least enough where you're actually gaining relatively substantial size, I mean, with some body fat, it's just the nature of it, that throws a lot of guys off. Nobody wants to see themselves except for in their most perfectly primed state of all, and that's all we see get posted. I mean, there's I don't know what they're doing. Like, I know what they're doing. They're just, dieting the whole time. But, oof. Look, man, for every couple of months I'm diced lean, that gets counteracted with a couple months of being a little bit bigger and softer. And each comes with its own benefit and drawback. So, I mean, I guess if you're like, freaking, cats to water about getting a little bit softer and not being so diced and peeled for the sake of, some size gain in an off season, then whatever floats your boat, right? Stay where you're at, just try and main gain whilst staying lean at the same time, which is kind of, sort of the opposite of what you'd be actually thinking is actually, manageable. But whatever. I'm not your coach. I'm definitely not your dad. And do what you want to do. But I think the temporary feeling of being a little softer, a little leaner, is very easily counteracted by just a couple of months of dieting, maybe a little extra cardio, and now you're leaner and bigger than you were before. So given that as the sort of the benefit of eating a little extra food, getting a little softer, putting some weight up, actually moving shit around, getting big and strong, dude, that's worth it. So that's my best point. I can't argue it any better, right? There's no random split or exercise style that's suddenly going to shoot you through a plateau if you're main gaining at like 180. But a marginally increased calorie intake, an extra few hundred grams of carbs here and there, make sure your protein game's on point and everything else, that could tip the scale pretty substantially. So it's not a flashy thing to say. It'd probably be much more interesting to hear. It's like, guys, I got the secret. I got the secret to working out here. You never even have to lift weights. All you have to do is sit here and do toe touches for 30 seconds. I'll show you my program. 10% off. So only $450 a month, and I'll teach. No, no. The secret does not lie there. It just simply is a situation of your food and your training, and half kind of just how much of a dog you are. Because nobody who doesn't have a little dog in them is gonna lift hard on the regular, especially if they're not really feeling like it. Don't get me wrong. I'd say I'm probably on the further end of the spectrum when it comes to, enjoyment of working out. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't do it. I've never, or at least I don't think that I have the thought process of like, okay, I need to work out because I need to stay big, because if I'm not big, then it's like, that's not exactly what I'm thinking. It's more so I freaking definitely like being big, and I like lifting weights as well, so everything just kind of goes hand in hand. But there are still days where I'm like, shit, man, I'm just kind of tired, coming off of a big ass trip, diet kind of scrappy, and that's a situation I put myself in, so it's not an excuse. And it's like, not awesome, perfectly ideal circumstances. I almost feel like I gotta kind of keep building up my momentum again, especially with some of the leg training. Those last 2 weeks was like, oof. I mean, really, there's just one crazy set of Smith squats